So hello and welcome to the United Nations Global Compact Leaders Summit. We're back in conversation in this next power session, and I'm joined by Tara Uzra-Dawood. Tara, welcome to the Leaders Summit. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Zubair, and of course the Leaders Summit for inviting me. I'm deeply honored to be here.
Excellent, great. We've got some amazing conversations to have. So today's power session is called Unstoppable Women. It's unscripted, so there's been no practice, no dress rehearsal. We're just going to get straight into it. For everyone that's listening in, you can reach out to Tara, connect with her through LinkedIn. She's doing some amazing work on progressing the women's agenda. And you can find out more about the work that she's doing by connecting with her. If you are posting on social media, don't forget to use the hashtag Uniting Business, Global Compact, and of course, Leave No One Behind. Tara, we've got tons of stuff to ask and tons of stuff to get through, but I want to get straight into it. So we have this perception of certain economies, certain countries not doing enough to progress issues or highlight issues and come up with solutions. We've got an opportunity to change that. This session is about the road to 2030. So 2030 is all about delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, changing the world on that journey in reshaping the world into a way that we'd like to see it. So, better opportunities, better climate, better facilities, the whole kind of shebang, and, everything in, that you can think of. And we're looking at what that road to 2030 looks like via Pakistan. So I want to try and understand a little bit about what it is that's happening in our space here in Pakistan and what's happening to progress women, what the road ahead looks like, and what more needs to be done to showcase both the Pakistani men and the women imparting change. So where do we stand currently at the moment? Is it all doom and gloom? Are we not doing enough? Is there no movement on the women agenda in Pakistan? Or do you have a different view? You see this as just a step in the right direction?
So Zubair, obviously there is an agenda on the ground. There's not only many women's groups, there's many women advocacy groups. One of the things our foundation, Ladies Fund, had done was do advocacy for more women in workspaces, and the State Bank has announced their policy of 25% of women in the next few years, and that's what we greatly advocated for to the Ministry of Finance. It's a step not only in the right direction, but that combined with women on boards are making more and more women in leadership positions, and of course, women in political positions have mandatory numbers as well. So the policies are very much in place, and they're getting stronger, and they're getting even more globally inspiring. I was at a director's training this past weekend, and one of the things being advocated is not just one woman per board, but three, minimum 3 of either gender. Now, I'm not saying that's yet been passed, but those are the conversations taking place behind the scenes here in Pakistan. So that's to address your earlier statement about what is the reality versus the perception. Mm-hmm. That being said, there's still a long way to go. The typical woman in Pakistan is not actually on a board or in a very powerful space, whether corporate or otherwise. And there's a lot more happening in terms of rape, child abuse, protection of women that needs to happen at the same time as the economic work. The focus of my work is, of course, greatly with the economic empowerment and protection of women and their access to finance. We've also been working closely with the State Bank to facilitate and nominate women for loans through the State Bank and their special SME loans program. So as I said, policies are there, but the reality is that not every woman is able to take advantage of that.
Do you think, Tara, it's perhaps there is also a cultural disconnect as well? So I know my wife is a working professional. My mother was, and my mother-in-law is really kind of empowered as well. And, and I see the relationship between us, my mom, and it's like, yes, of course you can. And I look after the kids and all that kind of stuff. And I have my responsibilities also. But do you think that we do still have cultural disconnect and cultural mindsets where traditionally it's not okay for the daughter-in-law to go out to work. And that perhaps stems from the mother-in-law saying, what will other people think? Does that exist? Or has it existed? Has it changed?
Of course, Zubair, it existed and it exists. But one of the works we discovered very early on in Ladies Fund is that money is the driver. So if the daughter-in-law is going out to work and she's bringing in more money than anyone else, suddenly the in-laws think that she's the darling and the husband quits his own job to become her business manager. So the same family, the very same family that could have culturally felt uncomfortable with the daughter-in-law working, if she's earning a lot, their attitude changes. And we found that time and time again. And most of the boutiques and leading women entrepreneurs, not everyone, but a significant enough number, have their husbands as business managers, the very successful ones.
So you raise an interesting point. Then perhaps it's not just cultural mindset in terms of what will other people think, Urdu, they say in Urdu, wo kya sochenge, but also the type of work that you're doing. So if it's culturally acceptable, or it's exciting, or it's innovative, or it has some status attached to it, do you think then that paves the way for more women entrepreneurs? Because there are some.
I actually think economy and financial results is more of a criteria than the kind of work. So if you're looking at the general, now we're talking urban, lower middle class girl, you're going to be looking at situations where how does she come to and from work? One of the biggest barriers is her transport. A guy might be on a motorbike. The girl will either take a rickshaw, definitely the back of her father's motorbike, not a bus really. And now Uber and Careem are very expensive. So the reality is that the numbers, and so what happens is often women go to and from work in shared vans, paid for by their companies. This is not something the typical male will be doing. Shared vans also mean that they have limited time, set timings to come to and from the office. So they're rarely the star if they're going before some of the discussions or other things happen, though they of course can be the star. So to answer your specific question, with that context in mind, if somebody wants to do something exciting, unless she has very open-minded, warm, welcoming in-laws, because by the way, several sets of in-laws are counting on women to work because they want double income. So that part of the culture is changing for sure. But I'm talking about the traditional, typical one still does not. And so if the woman is bringing in economic viability through her work. So there's one girl who I know personally, and she actually wants to be a chef or home cook, and home bakers have become very trendy these days. Her in-laws only are permitting her to be a home-based fashion designer because they think home chef is not as appropriate culturally. So it also differs from family to family. So something you would say that they might culturally be more comfortable with, some families are less culturally comfortable with. So the only thing we've seen across the board is if the money is very strong. So if you have two daughter-in-laws and one is, they're both fashion designers, they may discourage both, but the one that's bringing in the economic viability could change that tune for the whole family.
Okay, and I think that trend or that kind of thought process translates globally. So again, there's a big connect now with what's happening in Pakistan to what's already in place globally. But interesting also, I'm just going to caveat, Tara, that it's not just that in-laws think like this. Obviously, parents think like this as well, and husbands do as well. Fortunately, I'm not like that, but I know that that can be an issue, and vice versa as well. What about workplaces in generally? You mentioned there's a pick and drop service kind of concept in countries like Pakistan, and workplaces can offer that. But I'm assuming, therefore, then that's looking at multinational organizations, perhaps. Is that something that you would see in family-owned businesses, for example, in Pakistan, or smaller businesses in Pakistan? And then leading on from that, are workplaces that aren't traditional administration, marketing, HR? So I'm referring to manufacturing, for example, of either textiles or plastics or ceramics. Do you think that they are conducive environments for women's work? And I don't mean that from they can't operate machinery, just as that environment, has it been thought out with that mindset? Or is there still work to do in that regard?
Okay, so we can use the simple example of daycare.
No.
The majority of workspaces do not have daycare. Again, we've seen time and time again, a powerful woman joins that company and that changes. I sit on the board of PSO. They have a daycare because this dynamic woman, Shaista, many years ago got pregnant. And she was too valuable to the company. So according to folklore, that led to the creation of their daycare, which is used in every which way. And even male members have their children, male colleagues. So it's a daycare for all, but it started because one woman joined who was too invaluable for them to take any risk of losing her contribution, right? So that's one example. I also wanted to address workspaces in a different way, looking at it holistically, because Pakistan has become the #3 country in the world for freelancers. And as you know, in COVID, many people also had virtual offices, and that's become more and more acceptable and a part of any workplace climate, whether globally and certainly in Pakistan. And that is one of the biggest neutralizers for women. Because if both the male colleague and female colleague are working from home, we have found that women can be even more diligent unless they have the double shift of the husband, the children, and school teaching all themselves at home. But in principle, women at home can actually over-deliver. And as freelancers or virtual office, they are getting a leading edge for promotions and more opportunities and bringing in much more income.
Okay, and what about traditional manufacturing places? And I'm not trying to single out, I'm just trying to understand, because obviously from a outsider's perspective or Western perspective, if we say that, looking at economies on this side of the world, the perception perhaps is that there's a lot of manufacturing industry in Pakistan, like I referred to earlier. Are those industries, are the facilities in those industries and are those workplaces conducive for women, for a traditional woman to work in there, in terms of skill set, but also apparatus and facilities? And is that something that can change? Because saying it needs to change is one thing, but can it actually happen is completely the other end of the spectrum, right?
There's definitely, it can, and it already has started to. And the biggest ways it started to is that much success in planning is now going to daughters. Whether a family, a textile family, manufacturing family does not have a son, or their son is not interested in the family business, which happens as well. So daughters are more entering those spaces with succession planning to run those plants. And that is changing the work environment, the work style, and certainly the number of women working in those places. Because most of those manufacturing plants still have very much owners who are leading the way for that culture and the work culture.
And do you think, you highlight a very valid point that with succession planning, so it feels like there's structure, there's method, it's not just I have no choice kind of mindset. Do you think that with the change in workplace and workspace, that there's also a potential, or is already perhaps happening in your view, of a change in products and services that are thought from a women perspective? And I can't think of anything specifically other than mobile phones. We've had this conversation before that, men listen to a mobile phone from a different part of their brain and vice versa. So is now with succession planning, with women taking over business, seeing the advent not just of improved and enhanced workplaces, but also potential product innovation and services?
So it is very much changing. It's changing from the policies we mentioned earlier, from more and more women on board seats. It's changing from the policies we mentioned, more and more women in political positions, such as in the Senate and so forth, right? It's also changing, and the assemblies, of course, and it's also changing from the point of view of more women in positions of influence and leadership. Now, everyone knows 70% of consumer buying decisions are made by women. So women have always been on the buying side, big purchasers. But because of diversity being talked about and women also leading a lot of the entrepreneurship ventures that are coming up, we, of course, at Ladies Fund have the Barak Center for, by Ladies Fund, the nation's first ever all-female incubation center and co-working space for women. And this is a space that celebrates, encourages, nurtures, and incubates women entrepreneurs. So as more and more women are starting businesses, and in some in very traditionally male fields, you're having products thought through from the mindset of a woman. And certainly on the boards, having that one mandatory female is making a big difference in resiliency and not just in influence or the way of looking at decisions.
What does the road ahead look like? Do you think it's with all this change that's taking place that perhaps we're not all aware of, with the great influence and advocacy that's happening at every tier of the economy and society, and you talk about changing cultural mindsets as well? Do you think that journey's now going to get easier because we're talking about it more, we can see some change, or do you think it will get tougher? What's your kind of take on that?
I definitely don't think the journey is going to get tougher. I'm not also necessarily believing that we're talking about it more. If you look at panels from 20 years ago or so, there's always your token woman panel at many conferences. Much of our conversation today could have taken place in our parents' generation. In terms of the fact that the woman in the workforce, equal pay, and other education of girl conversations. We have, of course, our award-winning Educate a Girl initiative, both in Pakistan and Nigeria. And what's really interesting to me is once we had the Russian Consul General as one of our chief guests at one of our trainings in Karachi. And he said in his speech, and I've never forgotten this, is we in Russia do not have this conversation. Education is mandatory for everyone. So it would never occur to us to have a conversation about the education of girls. And that just really stuck in my mind that we are still having that conversation, because even though it is mandatory in Pakistan as well by policy, in spirit, it's not the reality. And we all know the famous stories, Mullah Yousafzai and others who have, in our foundation, of course, had found and awarded scholarships to Shazia Kanat, the two girls shot alongside her. That it's not always easy for a woman, certainly a Pakistani woman, to get educated or even work. But the fact that we are in 2021 having that conversation, because the conversation in many cases are still surrounding how is it possible? When's it going to happen? If you were going to ask me, Zubair, when will 2030 there be 100% education of girls in Pakistan? No one can answer that question because the policies were made eons ago. Yeah. So, I still feel that a think tank, those of us who are passionate about this should sit around the table and say, okay, if in 2025 we want to achieve this, 2030 we want to achieve this, how do we work backward? Yeah, so it would be more shocking for us to have a conversation that any single girl wasn't educated, because it would be beyond our belief. Because I still remember the Russian Consul General, he was flabbergasted that how can we have our conversations be like this? So there is a long journey ahead, in my opinion. I don't know if in our children's lifetime there will be these same conversations, but it looks like there will be, despite everything else. Conversations on women equality, equal pay, all these kind of things. Though everyone says the future is female, and we're seeing political changes around the world, the fact that in 2021, this conversation is taking place today, Unstoppable Women, is, while it's a great honor for me and it's an important conversation, it symbolizes a reality that doesn't mean it's the end of spotlighting women anytime soon.
Absolutely. And that nicely brings me on to my kind of last question, I guess, or what I want to learn from you is, what more do you think needs to be done to showcase the Pakistani men, and that's men in Pakistan and diaspora, as well as the women, as champions for gender equality? I mean, men do get a tough time around this, but obviously we all need to strive together. It's not just, you know, one gender's responsibility. We all have a role to play. So what do you think what more needs to be done to showcase both men and women who are advocating for gender equality?
Well, I think that we have to begin by acknowledging that Pakistani men are phenomenal. And any story to the contrary needs to be completely rewritten, because Pakistani men are phenomenal. And if we begin by appreciating and acknowledging there's a large amount of chivalry in the men in Pakistan, and there's a lot of priority given to women and concessions made for women in our culture as well. Like in the typical work environment, and I'm not going to talk about every work environment, there's actually a lot of respect given to women, not just in our mannerisms, but even in things as simple as how we address one another. Because of the formality and the a little bit old-fashioned way of addressing men and women with respect, both, that also endows immediate respect in conversations with women in our culture. So I think that's something we shouldn't take for granted. And instead of highlighting the percentage of men who are not very nice to women and not very encouraging to women, we should realize that the vast majority of the male population is. So we have Men Who Rock and Ladies Fund, where we spotlight men who are supporting the work we do and are incredible for women. We've also given awards to Men of the Year in our Ladies Fund annual awards for men who are champions for gender equality. And I think celebrating and building platforms to showcase men and women together as role models, because the sons and daughters, meaning the youngsters watching, whether they be 5 or they be 15, if they see both men champions of gender equality and women champions of gender equality, it makes all the difference. And I've spoken quite a bit, including with the US and Bangladesh, when we had a SARC event. The US had organized a SARC event on engaging men in gender equality, because I don't feel this journey has any chance of success without celebrating and including the men and women.
Yeah, echo that. Tara, I think you've raised some valid points today. Clearly, there's a lot more for everyone to do to progress this. And as you've rightly showcased, I think underpinning any progress on the gender conversation is about respect. And I'm so delighted that you were able to bring that out. And I think that fundamentally is what we're all achieving or trying to achieve. We will come back and have more conversations, because I don't think that we've even, touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we need to talk about and learn. So we'll do that in due course. Maybe we can start our In Conversation series podcasts around gender equality and respect. So we'll certainly keep the conversation alive. Thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I know there are a lot of people listening in who have got tons of questions, so maybe they can reach out to you directly, or they can reach out to the Global Compact office in Pakistan, and Nida can pick up those questions, and we can maybe do a relay of that. For everyone that's still part of the Leaders Summit, there's still 20 plus hours to go, so please do dip in, dip out, learn, share, respond, talk to each other, tweet, tag, mention whatever it is that we need to do these days. Tara, just before you go, I've got one final moment of reflection that I ask all of my guests. And it'll just take a minute. So just have a think. And what does the 1st of January 2030 look like for you as you wake up in the morning with your lovely cup of coffee and you think, okay, what is it that you would like that day to represent?
For me, definitely that day would be ideal if it represented the freedom that we've been sort of unable to experience during this pandemic. So the freedom to just go out, breathe oxygen without a mask, legally and for our own safety and the safety of others, meet whoever we want or meet no one at all, with an understanding of unlimited possibilities for every human on earth. That would be an ideal scenario. So whether you're a boy or girl, a man or woman, whether you're a senior citizen, whatever stage of life you are, all possibilities await you in the world I'd like to see January 1, 2030. And if any of your followers or watchers would like to, or summit attendees would like to contact me, they can at both TUDAWOOD, my name, and any of the social media platforms, or through our Ladies Fund. And you yourself, Zubair, are such a champion of change and of gender equality. So I thank you for your consistent and steadfast commitment to these causes.
Thank you very much, Tara. You're too kind. We'll definitely have more conversations with you. Thank you for sharing your contact details as well. And that means a lot to many people who are really trying to navigate this space and this journey, that people like yourselves can be so open and approachable. And that's what the whole point of summits like these are about. It's not just leaders having more conversations with more leaders. This is really about being open and inclusive and obviously diverse as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the summit, and we'll be talking again with Tara Dawood on what more needs to be done to progress the space for women and young girls, but also finding out about those amazing men that are doing their bit as well. Take care and speak to you soon.